Welcome to Cash Up, a weekly show where we converse with amazing folks in digital forensics and incident response. And today I'm so excited to be joined by Lexie van Den Heuvel. Lexie's a consultant with FTI Technology. Prior to her current role, she worked for KPMG. While newer to DFIR, Lexie has also had some of the most interesting internships and externships, not only for KPMG, where she later worked full time, but also as a sworn investigator for the St. Joseph County Prosecutor Office, as well as internships at Labor Policy Intern for the American Action Forum. She was a White House intern, completed an externship at Stryker, an internship in Spain at Caritas, ESPN Radio, and Rebel Green. Lexie earned her bachelor's degree in information technology from the University of Notre Dame, Mendoza College of Business. Lexie regularly gives back to the community, including via the nonprofit she founded in 2012, Cutting Costs for Celiacs. Her community work has been recognized multiple times, including with the Walsh Hall Citizenship Award, the Alumni Key Award, the Mary P. Hill Junior Citizenship Award, and first place in the nation for Junior Individual Documentary at National History Day. She shared digital forensics knowledge at both the Magnet Virtual Summit and the Indiana Prosecutors Association Conference, both in 2020. I first had the pleasure of meeting Lexie when I was a guest at the Women in Digital Forensics Camp, which she was running at Notre Dame in 2019, when she and her fellow interns at the St. Joseph's County Cyber Crime Unit built and delivered a summer camp to teach high school girls about digital forensics. I'm really excited to sit down with Lexie today and to talk to her about her journey into digital forensics, what intrigued her out of all of her samplings of different fields, as well as how she made the move from student to working in DFIR. And with that, Lexie. Hi, Lexie. How's it going?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me on today.
Oh, such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. So, you've had this really interesting movement from school to recently getting into the field, and you had opportunities to work in digital forensics while you were in school. And I'd love to just start by you kind of sharing your journey to how you got here.
Of course. So, as you mentioned, I had quite a few internships in my later years of high school and then through college, and they were very diverse. I had one at ESPN where I was kind of working on radio advertisements, and then I had one in Spain where I was working at a nonprofit and speaking Spanish, and then into digital forensics. So, I think that last job opportunity, my last 2 years of college, is what really solidified my interest in DFIR, and it's why I'm working in it now. We can jump in and talk about any specifics at the department there too. And now I'm at FTI in a really cool technology rotational program.
Awesome. Let's first start about the actual internships that you got to do that involve digital forensics. So, for people who are familiar with some previous episodes of Cash Up, we've had Mitch Kaiser on. He's a friend of Cash Up, a friend of the show, as we'd say, as well as an amazing human being. I personally consider him a mentor. And you got the opportunity to be one of those sworn students working in the lab. Could you share a bit about how that whole process went from you being a student at Notre Dame to getting accepted into that internship and then the kinds of things you did there?
Of course. So that internship opportunity was a really defining moment in my decision to go into digital forensics and kind of cure my intellectual curiosity. But they sent out an email that there was an opening for to be an investigator at Notre Dame. And I was like, they're going to let students do this. They're going to let students write warrants and conduct cases and be the lead digital forensics investigator on a case. And I showed up to my interview with Mitch, and he was just from the start fantastic. He was like, looking at all of the resumes, obviously did a lot of research on us, and he was really, really excited about getting more women in digital forensics. And throughout the interview process, he was asking about how we thought how to make sure that we were being impartial when we were going in through investigations. And then once I finally got the job, it was incredible to be in an atmosphere with so many other, are currently 10 or 12 people that work in the unit. And 9 or 11 of them. So the majority of them are women. So we were in this atmosphere where we were constantly being encouraged by other women and encouraging each other on, which was really cool early on. But with the internship itself, so what we did is we did the full investigative process. So as a junior in high school, I was writing warrants. I was going in and I was pulling data off
Junior
of
in
phone.
college.
Junior in college. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. Not in high school, a junior in college. And so we were going through the entire digital forensics process. We were extracting data off of the phones, and we were doing the full analysis of the case and the write-up for the detectives. And throughout this process, though we did work for the prosecutor's office, Mitch's main point of mentorship was that we are impartial finders of facts.
Absolutely.
And probably the hardest part of the job, but also the most important part of the job, was sometimes not finding anything at all. And using all of the different creative methods of research that Mitch has taught you, that we've learned through each other by communication in the lab, or just figured out on our own, and coming up to solutions or finding unique ways to solve a case. And the fact that I got to do that for the last 2 years of college was just an incredible opportunity. I was excited to go to work every week, great people that I worked with. And it also helped me meet a lot of wonderful women in forensics. So obviously I got to meet you. We did the camp. I also got to meet Heather and Sarah Edwards.
Let's talk about the camp, because so I just thought this was really amazing. So here are these young women. So Mitch reaches out to me, and then I reached out to Heather and Sarah, and the three of us came out there as guest speakers to each deliver one topic. But the bulk of the camp and the organization, the writing of the camp, was done by you and your colleagues to deliver a camp about digital forensics to high school students. And the levels of mentorship, I get goosebumps because we had these high school students learning from college students. That the near peer is so important in mentorship, that the person who's teaching you is a near peer. So Mitch giving a digital forensics lecture to a bunch of high school young women does not have the same impact as several college women who are doing digital forensics giving that that education and that hands-on labs and everything else that you guys built, and the teaching, learning to be able to teach digital forensics in itself instills so much more. But you were teaching the high school students and developing the entire program to teach them, at the same time having three women who are in the career field, myself, Heather, and Sarah Edwards and Heather Mahalik, who I'm sure everyone listening to this knows, the three of us coming out to the camp and us each sharing a specific one session with them. Also brought in some folks who had graduated from Notre Dame, who had been part of the program the internship program, who were in their first 6 months to 1 year working in the field. So like major near peer. And then for me, having the opportunity to do this with Mitch, who's one of my mentors. So just like all of those levels go up and down the chain. Even like in the evenings when we went out to dinner, or we got to do some social activities, with just the connections and bonds we made and the motivation. I believe one of those high school students, even while in high school, wound up getting to work there. And I mean, I just had such a fantastic experience with that. And I just applaud all the work that you guys were doing. And I made so many great connections with so many of you, with Brianna Drummond, with oh my gosh, I can't even, Julia Gately,
Laura Hernandez,
Laura Hernandez, just so many amazing folks who were and are still either involved in that program or who have moved on in their careers, all in this. And just sorry, I get blown away by it. It was such a high moment for me to get to meet you all, and I was so inspired by everything that you guys were doing and teaching, and the quality of what you were delivering to the girls participating in the camp. It was just beautiful.
I think what you touched on before about how we were teaching high school students is something that really sticks out to me in the digital forensics community in general, is that there really doesn't feel to me to be as much of a hierarchy in this field, because, and even when I walked in the office on the first day, Mitch says, I need you. I don't know
Yes.
what 18-year-olds are doing. I don't know what 20-year-olds are doing. Tell me about Snapchat. Tell me about Reddit, and trying to find, you know, Venmo stalking people my age is a very lucrative kind of thing. So just trying to find out different ways that people at different ages interact with technologies has made me, as somebody young in the field, feel valuable. And it's a really cool way to affect change in the digital forensics community, I think.
No, 100%. And I think that you just keyed in on something really interesting, which is the value of people at all different places and participation and backgrounds in our field. And it is absolutely critical, especially when we're talking about things that happen in technology in terms of language. The acronyms and leet speak that we used in my generation, being a little bit older than you, Lexie, is different, seriously, than the
Mhm.
lexicon that's used now. The
Yes.
meanings
Yeah.
of emojis actually change from generation to generation. But not even that, just the applications that are being used and how they're being utilized. And you're right
Mhm.
when you talk about things like Venmo stalking and what you see on an investigation is going to come from a different perspective than what someone like I or Mitch or anyone else would see. And I think it is so important that we value not just career experience, but also the life experience
Mhm.
differentiators that can be just in generational, just a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant point. So I'm really curious as to how maybe some of your other internships framed and affected the stuff you were doing as you started to delve into digital forensics.
Mhm. I would say that early on, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I had no idea. And that's why my mom and my teachers in high school really encouraged me to take advantage of some of these internship experiences in high school. And they were not full summer internships. I think it was like 10 hours a week. They were very short stints, but I got to work with a variety of different people and then figure out kind of the working style that I wanted in my future job. And what I really end up finding, and why I wanted to digital forensics, is I need that intellectual curiosity. I need my boss to come in. I need him or her to ask me questions, to get me thinking. And that's what's constantly happening in this community. And to come on back to
Sure.
the point I said before, is because you're trying to learn from me just as much as, I mean, I'm learning a lot more from you, but
Yeah.
there is some value that I can provide in that sense, which is really cool. And
So even the questions that you ask as we interact help me. Like I just want to be really clear about that. I don't think that there's any relationship in the field where it is one way. And I don't know anyone in the field that I've had the pleasure and luxury of working with who sees any communication or relationship as one way. We all learn so much not only from what you're doing and the generational stuff we were just discussing in terms of technology, but also from the questions and perspective of the way that you ask things and where your interest is. A lot of times that spurns new research and new
Mhm.
ideas and new thoughts. So that questioning goes both ways, right? Like to think that Mitch wasn't learning as much from you as you were learning from him, it's different things.
Mhm. And I also think that that experience of asking questions is something I got from my internships at the White House and also at American Action Forum, where I was a labor policy intern. I have had a really, really unique opportunity where I've had eight, I think eight-ish internships. Seven of the eight of my internships, I've had male bosses, but all of them have been very, very, very influential and helpful in terms of me being like a woman in the field. Many of them say, "Hey, Lexie, you've done a really good job here, but I noticed that there's one thing that you do. Um, maybe it's filler words. Maybe it's, you do know what you're saying. Don't start your sentences with maybe this will be wrong." I had a really wonderful boss at American Action Forum, Ben, who would constantly just ask me follow-up questions, and he's like, "I know you know the answer to this because you're intelligent and you've got this." And just having those male mentors in my life has been really influential, and a cool part of my current job and to have the confidence at work too.
I think you bringing up something really cool that we talked about before, which is just confidence,
Mhm.
that having that trust in the fact that you do know what you're saying, but also being confident when you don't. And stating things with confidence is going to help you both professionally and even in the interview process
Mhm.
when you're able to do that. I think that's so key. Um, how do you think that your skills from doing that specifically have helped you analytically, not just in speaking, but
Mhm.
have any of the skills that you learned from your previous internships helped you intellectually in terms of analysis or research?
Mhm. That's a great question. I do think that my time at American Action Forum really emphasized the importance of finding multiple points of evidence when
Mm.
doing a case. Um, just finding different ways to prove a point so that I'm not just convincing others, but I'm convincing myself that something is the truth. Like Mitch said, impartial finders of fact, finding that fact in as many ways possible. And then also just asking a variety of questions. I did a case at um, in in college for a high school student, and I wasn't really finding any evidence through texts or through voicemails on this specific case of a certain incident that happened. And then I was actually with my friend, and her brother was going through his phone. He was a little younger, just looking at the notes on his phone. I was like, "Oh, do you write yourself notes on your phone, little diary entries?" He's like, "Oh yeah, people in my generation just write it here. We don't write anything in journals." And so I ended up going to this case and looking at the notes section of her phone and finding some evidence that would help me out in the rest of the case. Her talking about her emotions, her talking about her relationships with other people,
Oh,
and then
wow.
finding keys that would have helped me in other versions of the case. And so just being very conscious of your surroundings is also another thing that I learned from those internship opportunities and from the like talking to other people as well. So yeah, asking questions and then just being aware of how other people interact with technology and the world around them.
Yeah, that whole observational piece of seeing
Mm-hmm.
how different people interact and then applying it to your casework, that's really interesting. I know that while you were at the St. Joseph County Crime Unit that you had opportunities to do research.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from having the opportunity to actually do digital forensics research?
Yeah. So it was funny. I was out one night and I think it was 2 a.m. And my friend was drinking a little too much. And I know, and there are obviously some physiological responses that happen when you're drinking too much. And so it's 2 a.m. and I text Mitch and I go, "Do you think that there's a way that we could tell if somebody's been drinking through physiological data on an Apple Watch or a Fitbit?" And he goes, "I wonder if we could talk about or figure out if there's a way to see if there's sexual assault through that heart rate variability, that heart rate change from Apple Watches and Fitbits." And so then Mitch and I went on a kind of a year-long research project to see if that would be something that we could figure out to see if there were fluctuations based on alcohol, based on drugs, based on consent. And preliminarily, it was a lot of me reaching out to you, reaching out to Heather, seeing the sequel and seeing the ways that you extracted data off of those devices. And so there was a lot of extraction and forensic experience that came from that. And then when it actually came time to dig into the project and look at data, uh, we did kind of sit down and say, logistically, this isn't going to work out. Ethically, we don't really know how we're going to get the data, how we're going to prove consent versus non-consensual. And it was just something that we didn't really think that we could get into. And so the research ended up not working. But I learned all of those SQL skills, all of those networking skills by talking to you, those skills of asking, maybe, do we look at variability? Do we look at the kind of all of the other factors? I'm forgetting some of them
Yeah,
right
all
now,
the
but all of the
experimental
other, yeah,
design.
all of exactly. And what's the best way to do it? What's the most effective and efficient way to do it? And also taking that into the courtroom, because I was constantly asking myself, is this going to be enough? Is this going to convince anybody? Is this going to make anybody think that the case is stronger because of this data? And even though that didn't work, that's still a question I ask myself right now. I'll go on and I will do a domain spoofing case, and I'll think, okay, so I found this information, but what is this actually going to prove in a court of law? What is this actually going to do? How is a jury going to perceive that? Um, and those are the kinds of insights that you get from experience and from failing at doing research.
I
So,
love this because I don't think that there's, you say from failure, and I think that that's a really important part. I don't think it's actually failure. I think it's opportunities of learning what didn't work,
mhm,
right? And what you learn from that process, anytime you're going to test something, you have a hypothesis. Your hypothesis is not always proven to be true, but you can learn so much from the process of what you learned there, and you can, by sharing those results, you can even save other people steps in having repeated that, and so that things can go on forward. And I love the fact that you were able to take it and learn skills, both thought skills, but also straight up like technical. That's how you learn SQL-like query skills that you're
mhm,
now applying. And I think it's just so great to recognize that even when you didn't prove your research project successful, where it's something maybe you would publish, that you still were able to get so much out of that. And I just
mhm.
think that's brilliant. You mentioned a
And
little bit about what you're doing now
mhm,
in terms of working at FTI and being on this tech track. Could you explain a little bit about that and what it is that you're doing today
yes,
and tomorrow?
I really, really love the position that I'm in now. So FTI actually had an opening for digital forensics, and I applied for the job. And the recruiter calls me up and she goes, "You have a lot of diverse experience. Your major is not exactly digital forensics. You do have interests in cyber. Kind of walk me through this." Because at the White House, I also did some just basic technical stuff, helping people with data and analytics. And she goes, "We have this rotational program." And I encourage a lot of young women or people of color to look this up. It's called the Diverse Leaders Rotational Program. And it is a program where they're trying to get more women and people of color in consulting at FTI. And they look at your experience and they put you on the track that's right for you. So I'm in this awesome track where I am doing 15 months, and every 3 months I switch. I'm doing data and analytics, technology, which I don't exactly know what that is yet, but that's okay. And then digital forensics, cybersecurity, and the track that I'm on now, which is an investigative practice called GRIP. And so we do due diligence work and we do asset tracing there, and it is a lot of OSINT work. And so people sometimes ask me, they're like, "What's a typical day in GRIP?" And I go, honestly, I wake up and the first thing I do is check Twitter. I go on the digital forensics and the OSINT feeds, and I say, what are people learning today? What are some cool new techniques that people have found today that they're sharing with the community? And that's how I start my day, is on Twitter. So it's a really cool field where every day I'm trying to learn something new, and trying to think in different ways. Um, and it was just a really, really cool program. I'm actually switching to cyber in a month now.
That is an incredible program. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is really a neat kind of experimental or experiential place where you get to move through. What a cool thing from FTI Consulting. And I know a lot of folks are very familiar with FTI in the field, so kind of neat to know that they have this
Mm-hmm.
program and that they really encourage people to do things like that. What I think is so cool about you having you on is you've had all of these interesting experiences and some of them have happened to you instead of you seeking them out, which is something that happens to many of us who end up in the field. But it really does give people some insight about the importance of internships and to find them and seek them out, as well as finding solutions in a tech track. And I want to talk about something you and I talked about before the show, which is really around knowing your worth. If you've recently come from having an education and internships, but maybe not what you might consider a full-time job working in digital forensics and bridging that gap. And it's something we talk about often on the show. And I've often had this conversation with people who've been in the field 15, 20 months. But I think it's a completely different discussion to have with you because you've been going through this process. Um, What do you think are some of the key lessons as someone's looking to make that transition? Maybe they have some internships, or they have some CTF wins, or they have some experience doing and publishing research, and they're finishing school and they're trying to make that jump into that first full-time job. What are your thoughts in that
Mhm.
area?
So, first of all, I would just say, know your worth. That is incredible that you're walking out into the field with that experience. And I think a lot of adults will say that through the interview process. But there are two major things that I've noticed. One, and this actually happened in college too. There was a young woman I was speaking to, and she was asking me about my time at St. Joseph Prosecutor's Office. And she said, I was looking through the requirements for this job, and I feel like I don't have any of the requirements. And I said, who cares? Who cares? Do you seriously think that everybody else your age is going to have those experiences or those? No, they put it on there, and it's helpful. It's helpful if you do. But somebody told me that women are less likely to apply to a job if they don't have all of the requirements. And since hearing that, I have applied to every job that I thought that I didn't have the requirements for.
We had that discussion. That was you and
Yeah,
I.
another experience, instance of mentoring right here. I can't believe that was you. That's so funny. So I told her to apply, and she actually ended up getting the job because you learn so much on the job. So much is you're going to learn on the job. So first of all, don't worry about the requirements. Obviously, it should be something you're interested in, and interest shows in interviews. People will always say that to me in interviews. They're like, you are the most enthusiastic. And I'm like, because I really, really am not going to apply to a job that I don't genuinely want to do.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing, it's kind of back to knowing your worth, is if you walk into an interview or a salary negotiation and you're concerned because you don't think you're going to get the job, or you don't think that you deserve, or you don't know if you deserve a higher salary, call somebody who's going to gas you up. That's what, as my generation says, who's going to encourage you and remind you of all of the wonderful things you did. Before I walked into my interviews and my negotiations at FTI, I actually spoke with you and Heather on the phone, and you reminded me, Lexie, you have 2 years of experience. And then you have all of this internship experience, which, what do you say? You said if you add it all up, it turns out to be like 2 years of experience too. So I had these 7 4-month internships and then 2 years at the prosecutor's office. So I did have a lot of job experience going into this position. And then, so you and Heather were super helpful to just say, you're incredible. You've done all these wonderful things. And then I also called my brother, who is 24. So I'm 22. And he said, you're asking me questions, Lexie, about value and about worth that I would never think about. I'm going to walk into a negotiation and I'm going to say, this is what I want. And this is why I want it. And he goes, and now I want you to do it to me. I want you to say, why do you think you deserve this? And just having somebody so close in age who's always been proud of me and inspirational has been very, very helpful for me in the process as well. So, people say, find your mentor. It can also be your brother. It can also
No,
just,
and I love that
someone
because
close.
that goes back to that concept we were saying about near peers
Mhm.
and the value of having multiple people gas you up, which is not an expression that in my 40s I've ever said, but I love it and I appreciate it. But that's exactly it. Sometimes we don't see ourselves for everything we've accomplished and done. It's really, really hard for us as human beings to do that. And taking that moment to have somebody else remind you of everything you've done, tell you your value. I always tell folks never to write a resume in a vacuum. Have somebody else who
Mhm.
knows you look at your resume, because chances are you missed things you did or you overstepped them.
Oh,
So, like, did you put the fact that you authored a digital forensics curriculum to deliver to young folks to learn about the career on your resume? You don't have to answer that, but
I
I'm saying
just
that.
added it, but yeah, I should have added it
But
2 years ago.
it's something that you should be doing. And on that note, I'm going to plug something that we're doing as part of the Magnet Virtual Summit, because I think it's really exciting and important. So the Magnet Virtual Summit just opened up yesterday for registration, or Sunday night. And as part of it, on May 19th, we're doing this mentorship day. And the entire day is focused on mentorship. So we've got amazing speakers speaking about mentorship. We've got Jason Jordan, who's a SANS instructor, and he's actually giving a talk about the importance of mentorship. But then we have Mitch Kaiser giving a talk where he's talking about how he leads young folks, as
Mhm.
well as about the program at St. Joseph's County. We have Daryl Fife giving us a talk that day about the Cyber Sleuths Academy, which is a program, full disclosure, I'm on the advisory board for, but that mentors and teaches high school age women and underrepresented minorities about digital forensics in an intensive program that's completely been virtualized thanks to the pandemic in inner cities, and gets them knowing about digital forensics and learning it. Then there's a talk by Dr. Kimberly Clay out of Nashville, Tennessee, who runs Play Like a Girl, which is full disclosure, I volunteer for them as a mentor, but I feel like I have to put all these disclosures out there. Her program teaches girls in middle school about STEM careers and giving themselves unlimited possibilities through STEM and sports. And just and so people can be involved with and learn about these things and spurn their own ideas. But it's not just about the talks. That day, we're going to have a virtual career fair, a virtual EDU fair, so education fair. So please be sure to check that out, folks. And even more importantly, there's a limited number of these, but some of the best people in the field have agreed to volunteer their time to do one-on-one mentorship sessions that you can sign up for. You can use this opportunity as a resume review, as a mock interview, or just to find out maybe some skill places that you can build to really take that next step in a career. And really just some of the top people in the field have volunteered their time to do those one-on-one mentorship sessions that you can sign up for. So I'm so excited for this mentorship day that's part of the whole MVS. Like, MVS is incredible, but I'm really excited about this day that we've focused on this, and just so much of it aligns to the things you're saying. And Mitch will be speaking as well. So I hope people check that out. I don't know if the mentorship sign up list has hit yet, but it should be in a couple of days. So if you register for the event, you'll get that Iowa blog post. So that's probably on me. So, so I've got to write that. But just I'm really, really excited about that. So you can take an opportunity to maybe get a jump start on some of the things that Lexie's been able to do in her career to make the jump from education into that field. And I think some of the advice you're giving here today to people is just amazing advice, and not the kind of advice that we necessarily get when we ask people who've been in the field, who've been on the show, who have amazing stories and amazing advice. But sometimes our advice on how to jump in is stale. So I love what you're saying in terms of how important it is to know your value. Um, so one of the other things you've done is you've taken opportunities to speak publicly, both to the Indiana State Prosecutors Association and at the Magnet Virtual Summit, and really put yourself out there in that way. How do you feel that taking the opportunity to speak publicly has helped you progress?
Of course. I actually started speaking publicly when I was in 8th grade, when I did National History Day. Um, I love it. It's just a super nerdy history competition that I got to partake in. And I did a project on Florence Nightingale, who was a military nurse, but she's really not known for all of this statistics that she did during the Crimean War. And she took death data of men who were dying from disease and presented it to doctors through pie charts, through graphs, everything like that, in a very mathematical and a visual sense. And she actually decreased deaths from disease down to 2% during the Crimean War.
Wow.
It's a really, really interesting tale about how she used visuals and math in order to convince people and to change their thought process. So that was helpful to me because I presented it at the school level, at the state level, at the regional level, and then nationally. So that's
And
four.
took first place.
I did,
We should.
yes, I did. I did win. But it was interesting because it was 10 minutes. I presented my documentary, and then it was 10 minutes where I sat down and these judges grilled me. and they asked me all of these questions. And so I'm sitting in a room of 20 people, and I have to stand behind my point. And I also have to stand there and admit when I don't know the answer. And I have to say, I don't know the answer. I can find that and I can get it back to you. But that moment of like having to prove my point has helped me when I was a labor policy intern and I had to write articles. It helped me in college when I had to do research. It helped me. I took a class with Dennis McDonough, who was the former chief of staff for Obama. Super cool guy.
Wow.
But I had to sit there and I had to use those same skills from National History Day and say, this is why I believe what I believe because of this data, because of this fact. And that's what public speaking really gives you the opportunity to do, is to get up in front of a group of people and prove that you've done your research, prove that you know that what you're talking about. And it also puts a lot of pressure on you during the research process to make sure you know what you're talking about. And then another thing with public speaking is that it gives you a new level of confidence, and it teaches you not to say filler words as much and to walk in a room and feel comfortable having casual one-on-one conversations because you've already spoken in a room of 100 people or 20 people or whatever it may have been. So I say take those early opportunities, fall flat on your face. There are so many times where I ended presentations in high school and I said, so yeah, that's it. And my teacher would say, no. We're going to end with a conclusion. We're going to end strong. Getting that feedback and taking that feedback and using it has made me more confident in this field. And it's been really cool.
Earlier to what you were saying about applying for positions, Kevin jumped in the chat and he said, apply, apply, apply. Like even when you were saying about that, I would say on this same note, submit, submit, submit. Because a lot of people, regardless of if you've been in this field for 10 minutes or 10 years, submitting to conferences is hard. Submit to speak. Like that's something people struggle with because it's going to help you in other ways. And I love this comment that you made in terms of you feel like you have to make the research that much deeper. It's not just that people are going to read it and that's all they get. They have the ability to ask you questions. I love how that built that confidence for interviews and everything else. For people who are wondering, the SANS DFIR Summit, their submission date is through this Friday. So if you're currently researching something, that's due March 19th. So submit. That's a reminder to myself. But please, please, please submit what you're working on, what you're researching. People need to know, and it's going to help you grow. And I really think that's really cool how much it's helped you. For folks who are looking to get into cyber, speaking of SANS, and I know we've been talking about breaking in, there is a New to Cyber 2021 SANS event going on April 21st. I know I'm on a panel. There's a lot of fantastic speakers. So if you're looking to break into any part of cyber, check that out. It's free. And SANS is putting it on, so you know it's good. So April 21, New to Cyber. But just really cool. I love how much you also reflect on things that you've done so many years ago and how each thing has set the stage. And I encourage everyone who's listening to think back on the things you've done, because everyone, this is episode 42, the answer to life, the universe, and everything, I guess, in this episode, Lexie. But for all those Douglas Adams fans out there, I think it's important to remember that we each have a different story. So we've had 42 guests, all with a different story. And every single guest, I've been like, oh my gosh, this is so incredible. And your story too is just so incredible. But what I want everybody who's listening to remember is that your story, even if you're not sitting here in the quote unquote hot seat, your story is incredible and amazing. And you have those things in your past to pick up on, find the value in, document it on your resume, and be ready to articulate that in the interview and know it and gain that confidence from it. Gas yourself up, as the young folks say. I just love that. I think it's so inspiring and so true that we really need to put ourselves out there and then recognize our worth. Like, so much of what you're saying is just sage advice, and it's so refreshing to hear it from you and see you applying it and seeing you. I am super motivated seeing everything you're doing and how your career is taking off and how you're taking all these skills and applying them to make your way. And it's just ultimately inspiring. So thank you for that.
And I love what you said though about that too, because every reflecting back on the people in your life, I mean, every person that I've met through different jobs. I mean, Florence Nightingale herself, the research project, Mitch, my boss Ben at American Action Forum, and you, all of the things that you have done in your life and that you tell me about, and you telling me about your experience, it helps me so much. And I think that every generation and the generations below me, they keep getting smarter because of all of the mistakes that I've made, and I'm getting smarter because of the mistakes that people have made before me. So
I
you're
love that.
you're always helping each other out.
I love that. And I love this whole concept of learning from failure and from each other. There's also something else you said that I really loved, which was you were talking about confidently saying, I don't know, or confidently saying, I don't know, and that's how I'm going to get the answer. And when you can say that with confidence and know what you know what you don't know, and then know that you can go find that out and being able to say in the interview, I don't know the answer to the question that you're asking me, but this is how I would go find out, or this would be my research process to prove that, or this is what I would test. That in itself has even more value sometimes than knowing the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
And, the concept isn't what somebody knows on an interview, but their capacity to learn and expand, because there is no knowledge set to do this job, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
constantly expanding. So I love that as well. So what does Lexie do outside of DFIR? You're doing all of this cool stuff. You do research, you're sharing, you're learning, you're trying all these new roles. What do you do when you're not at work?
Well, I just moved to Chicago, so and with the pandemic, everything's been a little slow. But I joined a field hockey league, so I'll be playing, getting out on Sundays and doing that. My nonprofit that you mentioned before, Cutting Costs for Celiacs, was actually just acquired by a global nonprofit in January.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you. So they're taking the program that I built and they're putting it in every state in the United States by the end of 2023, I think.
Do you want
So
to share
that's
a little
really
bit
cool.
about what the program does for
Sure.
people who aren't familiar? And
Um,
you started this
so
back in 2012. So I'm just
mhm.
doing some math. You were 13?
Yeah, so start of ninth grade. Yeah, 13-ish.
Wow. Wow. Incredible.
Um, and so I started a nonprofit. We help. I have celiac disease, which means that I can't digest gluten. Um, so we help low income families who do not have the money to afford a gluten free diet. A gluten free diet is 2 to 3 times more expensive. How much is a loaf of bread at the grocery store for you?
I don't know. I bake my own bread. That's like the nerdiest answer.
What? Okay, so well, okay, so
I'm
I
gonna
don't know.
guess like 240, but somebody
Okay.
two. That's just a guess. I don't regularly buy bread.
So gluten-free bread is usually $5 to $7.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yeah, that's dramatic.
and people who are on food stamps or some sort of government aid and have food allergies or intolerances don't get an additional boost to buy the food that they need. So a lot of them end up just feeding their children food that could be bothering them, that affects their performance in school, that can lead to early onset osteoporosis and infertility and stomach cancers. So I wanted to start a nonprofit that would help these children and make sure that they were getting the nutrients that they needed to live. Um, and we do a stipend program, so we help pay for that additional cost on their grocery budget every month. And we do a day of diagnosis. So the day you're diagnosed with celiac disease at the hospital, we give them a basket of gluten-free foods to know that they can eat, and coupons. And so now we're going to try to get that in every major city in every state in the US. And I'm very, very excited.
Wow, that is so incredible. I love that. I love that. And I love that you thought about giving back once you were diagnosed and had to make a lifestyle change to accommodate your body's needs, that you thought. My niece has celiac, and we actually turn
Oh,
over the whole kitchen anytime that they visit, which obviously we haven't done in the last year. And they have a completely celiac free house. Like gluten
yep.
free house,
Gluten-free house,
but
yeah.
celiac friendly house. Um, I joke with my brother because he'll do stuff like eat junk food in his car because he'll crave it. And and he can't, and his daughter doesn't use it. They have two cars and they don't. Yeah. So anyway, he does this whole thing, not even in the garage, but in his car if he really wants
That's so
something.
funny.
He's crazy, craving something. So I totally think that that's so admirable that you recognize that there is a need in people who have less means to be able to get access so that they can get nutrients. Because at the end of the day, if you have celiac and you're eating the wrong foods, you're also depriving yourself of other nutrients in the other foods you eat. So I just think that that's incredible. So thank you for doing that. I just think that's beautiful. So just to come full circle, like if you were to give your top tips for someone looking to get started in DFIR, what's Lexie's top tips for getting started in DFIR?
Wow. So I would say if you're in college, just get experience. Follow Jessica on Twitter. Look at all the times she has the capture the flag events. Get involved. You might not know what to do the first time, but then you learn and you'll gain that experience and see if it's actually really what you want to do. That is the major, major thing about my internships is all 8 of my internships, they've been so random, so different. But every time I did them, I learned what I didn't want to do and I learned what I did want to do. And so going through that process, experience is just going to teach you so much to do that. And then the second thing is surround yourself with people who will gas you up. I do that to my friends too. A lot of them call me before interviews and go, Lexie, I really need to be gassed up right now. And I'm like, okay, let's run through all the things that you did. So find a community of, what'd you say? It was near peers that'll do that for you. And then 3, just don't be afraid. I don't know if you remember this. I was actually thinking about this the other day. The reason you came to the Women in Forensics camp is because I cold called you.
You
Because I
did.
cold called you and I said, I've seen all of the work that you've done. I had a question, I think it was about just women in forensics. And then I go, hey, do you want to come to this camp? And so now here I am 2 years later chatting to you. So don't be afraid to cold call, cold email.
And you know, it's really funny because you called me. I said, yeah, I got in touch with Mitch, found out more, and then literally was like, let me talk to Sarah and Heather and see if they're interested too. And you're right. You just sent me that note, and it was really an amazing experience. And I'm so glad that I've gotten to know you and a lot of the other alumni and current students, getting that real life experience. And I think that is really something to stress. If you have the opportunity for an internship, take it. Apply for these internships. Look at the programs that you might qualify for, and get your foot in. I mean, just amazing. Thank you so much, Lexie. It was such a pleasure having you on today. Such great advice. You're doing such great things. I hope that this episode really encouraged others. I hope to see you guys on Mentorship Day at NVS. I hope to see you at New to Cyber at the SANS event. I hope you all start following Lexie on Twitter and seeing the cool things that she's doing. Next week, we have another great guest. We have Ali Hadi, who is just incredible. You probably are familiar with his talks on Linux forensics and all of the great stuff he does at Champlain College as a professor there. And then more great guests, Brian Hussey, Matt Mitchell, who is one of our featured speakers / keynotes at Magnet Virtual Summit, along with Brett Shavers and Jad Sliba, Ori Curbelo, who's doing incredible stuff, Steve Watson, and more. So looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye all.
Thank you, Jessica.